$2 donkey. That's all I could afford. But what he led me to would change everything I knew about my life. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and become part of our YouTube family. Hit like if you're excited and drop a comment with your location and time. Trust me, you don't want to miss this story. At 35, I had learned that desperation has a texture. It's not just a feeling, it's the ache in your bones when your body knows you've been beaten by life more times than you can count, and the faint, stubborn glimmer of hope that keeps you dragging yourself forward anyway. I walked into the small-town auction that morning with only $12 and nothing to my name, but a stubborn pride I couldn't yet let die. My farm had failed. Drought, bad luck, and a chain of poor decisions had reduced years of work to dust. The neighbors had long stopped inviting me over, and I was no longer the man who once proudly showed his crops. I was invisible, but invisibility has its advantages. Nobody noticed me. Nobody questioned what I did or where I went. And sometimes, in such moments, the unseen can see things that others cannot. The auction yard was a hive of chaos and laughter. Dust swirled in the shafts of sunlight, piercing through the open gates. People shouted over one another, pointing at scrawny pigs, old horses, and tired cows as if their failures were entertainment. Hooves clattered, chains rattled, and somewhere a dog barked. I moved along the edges, keeping my hands in my pockets and my eyes on the ground, careful not to be noticed. Every so often, someone would elbow a friend, nod toward me, and smirk. "Look at him," they said. "The poor fool who lost it all." I kept walking. I didn't need their opinions. I didn't need anyone. I just needed a way forward, even if forward was just a few small steps at a time. And then I saw him, a donkey, small, lean, and coated with a layer of dry dust that made him look almost gray. His fur was matted, his ribs faintly visible under thin skin. But his eyes, those eyes stopped me cold. They were sharp, intelligent, and strange in a way that didn't belong to any ordinary animal. He stood alone in the far corner of the pen, ignoring the chaos, ignoring the other animals, ignoring everyone else. When a boy jabbed him with a stick, the donkey barely flinched. I felt a flicker of recognition. Something about the stillness, the quiet strength of this small creature, spoke directly to the part of me that refused to give up. The auctioneer's voice cut through the din. $5, going once. No one moved. $3, going twice. Still nothing. Laughter rolled across the crowd. "Who'd want that useless thing?" someone shouted. The donkey stood unmoved, as if he knew that the words didn't apply to him. My chest tightened. There was a stubbornness there that mirrored my own refusal to be written off by life. I raised my hand before I even realized it. $2, I said. The laughter intensified. A dusty donkey, a desperate man, a joke for everyone to enjoy. The auctioneer's hammer fell, and as I grabbed the rope and led him away, something strange happened. The world around me seemed quieter. The donkey's calm presence seemed to push away the noise, the ridicule, the past failures. For the first time in months, I felt a small spark of control, not money, not security, just control. The sense that maybe, just maybe, things could change. I spent the next hour getting him settled. My shed was little more than a pile of old wood and tin roofing, but it was shelter, and for now, it would have to do. I fed him scraps, spoke to him softly, and marveled at how he listened. Not in the mechanical way animals respond to commands, but in a deep, patient way, as if he were understanding me. I laughed to myself at the absurdity. A man who had lost everything, finding comfort in a donkey he bought for $2, but there was something in his eyes that made me feel understood. Night came slowly. The wind moaned through the cracks in the shed, rattling the tin roof. I lay on the floor, exhausted, listening to him shuffle softly in the corner. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of the wind made my heart jump. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking that this donkey was more than he appeared. He was quiet, observant, and oddly deliberate. His gaze met mine every so often, unwavering, and I felt a strange sense that he could see right through my failures, my fears, my desperation. By morning, I decided to take him for a walk. The hills behind the town were dry and cracked, but they had a beauty to them that I had long forgotten. The donkey moved at a steady pace, ears twitching, nostrils flaring, eyes alert. I tried to keep up, not sure where he was leading me, and then he stopped. Just like that, he froze, planting his hooves firmly into the dirt. I tugged at the rope, gently at first, then harder. He wouldn't move. For a moment, frustration took over. I was tired, hungry, and already skeptical of this strange animal. But then I noticed the intensity of his gaze fixed on the ground ahead. He stomped once. Then again. I realized slowly that he wasn't resisting. He was pointing, or at least trying to show me something. I knelt down, brushing away some of the dust at his feet, expecting perhaps a rock or a root. Nothing. Yet the way he shifted, nudged, and stomped told me that there was more here than met the eye. My pulse quickened. I had no idea what it was, but instinct told me to trust him. We spent the next hour walking that stretch of hills. Every time he stopped, I examined the ground carefully. Every time, I found something small. Insignificant things at first. A hollow in the earth shaped like a footprint. A strangely shaped stone. A patch of ground worn down unnaturally. Nothing of value, nothing anyone would notice, but the pattern was there. He was leading me somewhere. Somewhere I couldn't yet understand. And with every stop, with every curious glance, I felt myself changing. A stubborn, broken man was starting to become alert again. Learning to read signs, to observe, to trust intuition. I hadn't realized how dull my senses had. Grown after months of failure, but this donkey, he demanded attention. He demanded focus. And slowly, I began to feel alive again. My mind awakening in a way it hadn't in years. By late afternoon, we reached the crest of a hill that overlooked the valley below. The town looked tiny from up their dusty roofs, narrow roads, and the fields I once tended so carefully. I stopped, breathing hard, and the donkey turned his head to look at me. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. This small, dusty animal had given me a purpose. He hadn't just been bought for $2. He had been given to me for a reason I didn't yet know. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not a flimsy hope. Not the desperate wish of a man who has nothing. But a real, solid spark of it. And deep down, I knew that whatever came next, I wasn't going to face it alone. The donkey and we were a team now. As we began walking back toward the shed, he stopped once more, ears pricked, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what he was sensing, but instinct whispered that this was only the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, I realized that the life I thought I had lost was quietly waiting for me to find it. Again, I had the courage to follow where he led, and for the first time in years, I believed I might just have that courage. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The world outside my shed was quiet, the kind of silence that carries a strange weight, like it's holding its breath for something important to happen. The donkey was already awake, standing alert in his corner, ears twitching toward every faint sound. I felt a strange thrill as I realized that he seemed more awake than I had ever been in years. The previous day's walk had stirred something in me. It was more than hope, it was curiosity, the sharp, electric kind that makes a man forget himself and pay attention to the world with every sense. I fed him quickly, giving him the little grain and scraps I had saved. He ate silently, chewing with steady rhythm, eyes never leaving mine. I noticed the way he shifted, how his hooves occasionally dug slightly into the dirt, as if feeling for something beneath the ground. My curiosity was growing. I had no plan, no expectation. Yet I felt compelled to follow him wherever he wanted to go. By mid-morning, I led him back toward the hills, this time without hesitation. I had begun to trust him in a way I hadn't trusted anything or anyone in a long time. Every few steps, he would pause, lift a hoof, and stare at something in the distance. I followed, eyes scanning, ears straining, heart racing with anticipation. There was a rhythm to his movements, almost like he was showing me a secret path hidden from ordinary eyes. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, burning the dry dust into the air. We traversed narrow paths, overgrown tracks, and broken stone walls that once marked property boundaries. Occasionally, I caught sight of wildlife, a rabbit darting through the brush, a hawk circling above, but the donkey never wavered. His focus was singular, unshakable. Something about him demanded focus, demanded patience, and I found myself becoming patient. I found myself watching, listening, noticing things I had long ignored. It was late afternoon when he stopped again, this time at the edge of a small grove. The trees were twisted and sparse, their leaves brittle from the sun. He planted his hooves firmly, sniffed the air, and then turned his head toward me, eyes sharp and expectant. I frowned, unsure what he wanted. He nudged me forward, then backward, circling slowly. Before finally stopping at a patch of uneven ground, instinct took over. I crouched down, brushing aside the dry leaves, searching the dirt. My fingers scraped against something hard, a stone maybe, or a buried root. I pressed harder, uncovering a small indentation in the earth. The donkey stomped once, then again, as if urging me to look closer. I knelt fully, hands trembling, and noticed a faint trail leading deeper into the grove. It was subtle, easy to miss, but unmistakable once my attention was drawn to it. I followed the trail. The donkey walked beside me, head low, ears flicking, tail occasionally swishing, but always calm, always deliberate. I couldn't explain why, but I felt a growing sense that something remarkable awaited us, something beyond my understanding. My heartbeat quickened. I realized that the spark of curiosity the donkey had ignited in me was transforming into a real, burning anticipation. I was alive again, not just surviving, not just scraping by, but alive. We reached a small clearing at the heart of the grove. The ground was softer here, and the shadows of the trees stretched long and twisted. The donkey stopped abruptly, planting his hooves firmly and staring at a single spot in the dirt. My eyes followed his gaze. At first, it seemed like nothing. It just leaves, dirt, and the faint outline of roots. But then I noticed a shallow depression in the ground, perfectly circular, almost like something had been placed there and removed long ago. I knelt down and touched it. The dirt felt different, cooler, almost damp despite the heat. My hands dug slowly, carefully, brushing away the top layer. Then, beneath the soil, I felt something solid. Not a box, not metal, not anything valuable in the usual sense, but a strange, smooth object shaped like a small cylinder, hollow at the center. I pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked, strangely cold to the touch, and had markings etched into it, tiny symbols I didn't recognize. But that somehow felt familiar. The donkey watched silently, calm as ever, as if he had expected this. I turned the cylinder over in my hands, feeling its weight, tracing the lines etched on its surface. My mind raced. What was this? Who had placed it here? And why had the donkey led me to it? I decided to take it back to the shed, tucking it safely under a pile of straw. The donkey followed closely, steady and patient, as if he knew that the next steps were up to me. I couldn't stop thinking about the object. It wasn't treasure, not in the conventional sense. It wasn't gold or coins or something to sell, but it felt important, urgent even, like a key to something I couldn't yet see. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with the donkey and the cylinder. Each morning, we walked the hills and the woods around my property, and each day, he led me somewhere, new places I would have ignored, paths that seemed ordinary until he stopped, nudged, or stomped. And each day, I noticed something about myself changing. I was sharper, more aware, more alert to details I would have walked past before. I started remembering things, patterns in nature, the behavior of animals, the way wind shifted across the land. The donkey was teaching me, in his own quiet way, to observe, to think, to notice. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold and crimson, I finally understood something. The cylinder I had found was just the beginning. It was a signal, a proof, a nudge, but the real journey was what the donkey had already begun, teaching me to see again, teaching me to trust intuition, teaching me to believe that life could change. And then it happened. We were walking a narrow ridge above the valley when the donkey froze, not just paused, but stiffened, ears pricked, tail high. He turned to face me fully, and for a moment, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Something was coming, something I could feel, though I couldn't yet see it. A sound, faint at first, like a low rumble, grew beneath the ground. The leaves trembled. The air smelled different, sharp and electric. I glanced around, heart hammering. The donkey stamped once, then ran a few steps forward, nudging me to follow. I did, and in that instant, I realized something incredible. I was no longer just following an animal. I was following a guide, a teacher, a companion who understood more than I ever could. Whatever lay ahead, whatever challenge, Whatever discovery, the donkey and I were bound to it. And I wasn't afraid anymore, because for the first time in years, I believed that the impossible might be possible. And I knew that this donkey, bought for $2 on a whim, held the key to a future I hadn't even imagined. As the rumble grew louder and the shadows stretched long across the ridge, I tightened my grip on the rope. I had no idea what awaited us, but instinct screamed that it was something extraordinary, something that would change everything. And with the donkey leading the way, I knew I was ready to face it. The rumble beneath the ridge didn't stop. It grew louder, deeper, shaking the dry ground beneath my boots. I gripped the donkey's rope tightly, feeling his steady heartbeat through the leather, and followed him without hesitation. My mind raced. The cylinder I had found days ago sat heavy in my coat pocket, its etched symbols vibrating with a strange energy I couldn't explain. Whatever lay ahead, I could feel it. Not with my eyes, but with every sense sharpened by the donkey's guidance. We moved down a narrow slope into a shallow valley, the air suddenly cooler, the smell of wet earth and moss replacing the dusty heat. I noticed the trees here were taller, denser, and somehow alive in a way. The rest of the hills weren't. Every step we took seemed purposeful, like the land itself was directing us forward. The donkey moved carefully, ears twitching constantly, eyes alert to something I could not see. And then we reached it. A natural stone archway, half hidden by vines and shadows. Curving high above the valley floor, I froze, my breath caught. I had never seen anything like it. An archway that seemed to hum faintly. The air around it, thick and vibrating, as though charged with energy. The donkey stopped at its base and looked back at me, eyes steady and knowing. For the first time, I realized that he hadn't just been leading me through the hills and woods randomly. He had been preparing me, training me to see, to notice, to trust instinct. He was a guide, and this was the destination he had chosen. I swallowed hard and stepped forward. The rumble beneath the ground grew louder as I passed under the arch, and the light changed, softening into a golden haze. That the cylinder in my pocket began to vibrate faintly, and I felt an electric tingle run up my spine. I had no idea what I was about to encounter, but the fear and doubt that had plagued me for years melted away, replaced by something unfamiliar. Courage. The valley beyond the archway was unlike anything I had ever seen. Small streams of crystal-clear water wound through lush grass. Wildflowers in impossible colors bloomed along the banks, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of unknown blooms. In the center of the valley was a stone platform, worn by time but clearly constructed by human hands long ago. On it, engraved in the same symbols as the cylinder, were patterns I instinctively traced with my eyes, my mind recognizing them without understanding why. The donkey walked onto the platform and stopped. I followed, hands trembling. As I placed the cylinder onto the stone, a soft, low hum filled the valley. Resonating in my chest, the markings on the cylinder glowed faintly, and suddenly, a series of stone tiles shifted beneath my feet, revealing a hidden spiral staircase descending into the earth. I looked at the donkey. His eyes met mine, calm and unwavering, and I realized he had known this all along. I descended cautiously, each step echoing in the hollow stone tunnel. The air grew cooler, damper, and the smell of earth and minerals was strong. The cylinder pulsed in my hand, lighting the way as I followed the stairs down into darkness. At the bottom, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The walls were carved with murals depicting scenes of discovery, animals, and strange devices I couldn't comprehend. The floor was scattered with tools, small objects, and what looked like remnants of a long-lost civilization. I felt my heart race. This wasn't treasure in the usual sense. This was knowledge, secrets of the past, and I had stumbled into it entirely by chance, or rather, by the donkey's guidance. For hours, I explored the chamber, marveling at the intricate designs, the careful construction, the evidence of human ingenuity long forgotten. Every object I touched seemed to hum faintly with energy. As if acknowledging my presence, the donkey moved silently beside me, calm and alert, never wandering, never distracted. It was clear to me now, he wasn't just an animal. He was a guardian, a guide, a living key to these secrets. I found scrolls wrapped in weathered cloth, filled with diagrams and symbols matching the cylinder. They detailed inventions, agricultural techniques, and mechanical devices that were far ahead of my time. I realized that whoever had built this place had left knowledge behind for someone who could understand it, someone who could see beyond the ordinary. And somehow, the donkey had chosen me. Days passed in the chamber, though outside only a few hours had likely gone by. I worked tirelessly deciphering the symbols, organizing the tools, testing some of the devices with limited materials I carried from the shed. The donkey was always beside me, guiding me to the right places, nudging me toward the objects I needed to examine, patient as a teacher. With each discovery, I felt a surge of pride and purpose I hadn't known in decades. I was no longer the man who had lost his farm. I was someone capable of learning, building, understanding, and perhaps even creating something that could change the world around me. Finally, I emerged from the chamber, the cylinder still pulsing faintly in my hand, and looked at the donkey. He nuzzled my shoulder gently. I laughed, a full, unrestrained laugh, feeling alive in a way I hadn't in years. For the first time since my failures, I realized that my life had changed, not because of luck or money, but because of guidance, patience, and the willingness to follow a path that made no sense to anyone else. Word of my strange discovery spread slowly through the town, but I didn't care about fame or fortune. I cared about understanding, about growth, about the quiet, unspoken bond between me and the donkey who had led me here. People whispered, laughed, and shook their heads, calling it nonsense. But I knew the truth. I had been chosen, guided, and transformed. The donkey had seen potential where I saw only ruin. He had pushed me to notice, to think, to grow. Months later, I returned to the valley again and again, bringing with me tools, supplies, and curiosity. I built, I experimented, I documented, and with each passing day, the bond with the donkey deepened. He remained my constant companion, silent yet perceptive, teaching me lessons I hadn't realized I needed to learn. Patience, observation, trust, qualities I had forgotten, qualities I had overlooked in my desperate rush through life. And sometimes, when the sun set over the hills and cast long shadows across the valley, I would look at him and wonder, had I found the donkey, or had he found me? Had I stumbled into this discovery by chance, or had he been waiting, guiding me toward something I couldn't have imagined alone? Whatever the answer, I knew one thing: everything had changed. The man who arrived at the auction with only $12 and despair in his heart was gone. In his place was someone who could see, understand, and act. Someone who had been taught, guided, and trusted. And all of it my rebirth, my purpose. My path forward had begun with a $2 donkey, whose eyes held far more wisdom than any human I had ever met. As the golden light faded and stars began to emerge above the hills, I tightened my grip on the rope and whispered a quiet thanks, not just for the donkey, but for the journey, the growth, and the new life that awaited. The adventure was far from over, and I knew there were mysteries still hidden in the valley, waiting for the patient, the observant, and the brave. And with him beside me, I was ready to face whatever came next. For the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid. I was alive, and I had everything to discover.